right, well, it's the end of the week.
It is the end of the week. I've never done this with you.
We're going to do a little special episode starring Jennifer Hall.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you again.
I know no one's asking, where's David? But he went skiing this weekend.
Where?
I don't know, Bromo.
There's like not an inch of snow anywhere, so
yeah.
That's a lie if I've ever heard one.
Not a smooth move, but once you've paid the down payment, I guess you keep the hotel resis going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But we have an interesting thing today, right? We're going to do a Behind the Headlines episode where we really dig in. And today we're going to take an article out of Supply Chain Dive. And it was fun for us, and I know you're, everyone at Lid, most keen about the looking at what's going on in the retail landscape and this particular article, and I know Jeremy's going to slap it up, some of the comparative indicators of the various retailers and their performance in their supply chain, at least from an inventory perspective.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I did look like I was going to chime in.
Say something.
No, not yet.
So I don't know how Jeremy will present this. Hopefully he will do it in the way that we're about to talk about it. But imagine this article, I think we have about 12 retailers in what we, now, the article puts all the retailers in a single bucket and compares them, right? But to me, and I wonder what you're thinking, I find that made no sense.
Right, you've broken down into 3 groupings.
Yeah, because I think there are what we call mass merchants / department stores. Then the dollar store format, and then apparel, like pure play, kind of like branded apparel.
Yeah.
Right? And they are all different. So it's just interesting to think about them as a group, but then differently. So if we start with this mass merchant category, we had 4 companies: Walmart, Target, Kohl's, Macy's. And these are the inventory, cost of sales, operating margin, weeks of supply that they went into the busy Q4 season with. So the end of Q3, these are the financial reportings they all made, right? So I'll just start off.
Okay.
One general comment.
Yes.
When it comes to, when you look at this on a table, and like I said, Jeremy will show us, it is amazing just how preeminent Walmart is in the world. If I look at Walmart's total inventory, it was $57 billion. That is more than all the inventory of the other 11 retailers combined. They are the
big whale.
They are a behemoth, right? So what do we have to say about Walmart's performance, at least at that snapshot in time?
Well, so we also have quotes from them in it.
Where they comment?
They comment.
All right, so...
And I'll let you speak to the numbers, but I'll throw in some quotes from our old pal, John Rainey.
All right, so let's just say Walmart, starting there. I don't think I'll read all the numbers. Like we said, we'll put the charts up.
We could probably gesture, because Jeremy's going to have it right here.
Is it going to be here? I don't think so. I think what happens is it takes over and we get erased.
Fair enough.
We're not at blue screen technology yet.
Okay.
But Walmart, so I said about $57 billion worth of inventory. That's down 5% from the year before, which means slow, steady improvement in turns. And actually pretty good in turns because their cost of sales has gone up 5%.
Yep.
And they did so with zero change in their operating margin. And their operating margin is a nice 4.56%. Their weeks of supply, which is how we like to talk about things. We don't like the accounting inventory terms.
A 1 over.
About 6 weeks of supply through their supply chain of inventory. So what is Walmart's thoughts about this?
So John Rainey, he said that they have continued to do a good job. So they are stable. They're doing a good job at managing their inventory, and that they're maintaining discipline.
Well, I think that's true. When
Old
you
reliable.
Look at it, sorry?
Old reliable.
Set against Target, Kohl's, and Macy's, Target certainly has, on an operating margin basis, done a dramatic improvement, and comes in with a slightly better operating margin than Walmart, but they're sitting on about 50% more inventory per dollar sold
Right.
than Walmart is. So it's from a working capital perspective, it's there are costs below the EBITDA line that Target is paying that Walmart is not. And then when you go on to Kohl's and Macy's, you really could see they are two different groups of companies, right? Oh, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to, before we moved on from Target, that they speak as well. So they were interviewing their COO, and he speaks to the fact that within the last year, them reducing their inventory that they have, that they've been able to unclutter their facilities. And again, reiterating the point, they renewed focus on retail fundamentals and continued work to enhance efficiency.
And this, I think, is the first bit of gobbledygook that comes from these earnings calls, because okay, it's true, their inventory has dropped 17%. So they've certainly decluttered their warehouses. The cost of sales is down 12%, right? And you got to imagine that's not because all the pricing got cheaper, but they are selling less. Their revenues have dropped as well, and I say that because it's just interesting comparing Walmart to Target in light of that quote where they're like, "Look at us, we've emptied our warehouses." It's like, yeah, you have, but not for the reasons you're bragging about. Walmart over the same period has made has doubled its performance on inventory turns. Doubled its improvement, right? It's not the performance, but the rate of improvement. So here's Walmart chugging away and really, taking an axe to its inventory in a smart way that doesn't hurt margins, that keeps sales going. Target's bragging about, yes, a huge drop in inventory, but the weeks of supply are not that much better, 6% better. So, sorry, buddy.
They're taking the win, maybe a bit early.
A little bit.
Fair enough.
And then we have Kohl's and Macy's. I know Kohl's has a lot of work to do to get itself sold off or something. I don't know what it plans. And then we have Macy's, and I think I know you read me the quote. What did the Macy's people have to say?
My takeaway from Macy's was actually more just for us nerds, that they're re-emphasizing the data-driven mentality. And they're saying, utilizing our data-driven tools to reduce the length of seasonal clearance activity by several weeks.
It does worry me because we love data. And I don't know, I look at the Macy's data and it doesn't make me say good for you. I mean, an operating margin of 2.42%, right? So that is almost exactly half of Walmart's operating margin, right? It's not an easy. That's a tough thing.
Well, at least we're not at AI yet, so.
No, but I wonder, like, we're getting down to maybe when they'll introduce AI and they'll drop another percent in their operating margin. Moving on to the dollar store, guys, we've got Dollar General and Dollar Tree, and I think this is also another interesting storyline. Going through the numbers, Dollar General's actually increased its inventory. Dollar Tree has trimmed it almost imperceptibly. The cost of sales has gone up for both of them. Dollar Tree has improved sales twice as fast as Dollar General. Again, assuming that the cost of sales is a proxy for sales. And operating margin has actually deteriorated for both of these companies. But there's a pretty huge difference between Dollar General and Dollar Tree in operating margin. Dollar General has a very nice operating margin, whereas Dollar Tree, doesn't even get to Kohl's level of operating margin.
Yeah, it's not looking good for.
And the weeks of supply, as you would think, if Dollar General's inventory went up, their weeks of supply did as well. So a less efficient inventory in the pipeline, whereas Dollar Tree has made some improvement to their inventory turns.
Yeah, which is interesting, coupled with the fact that Dollar Tree is saying that with the improved supply chain, that they actually got their inventory, as they say here, well ahead of schedule, as if that's positive.
Yeah, that was another funny one you were reading to me. So what did they said they actually, what I don't understand, they said that some of their Asian overseas suppliers got inventory into their supply chain well ahead of schedule.
Due to a rapid recovery across our supply chain.
Recovery. And I guess, and I don't know, okay, look, all of these companies operate different buying payment terms and all that. I know that if I was paying invoices when it shows up on my dock, I wouldn't be thrilled that people showed up early. I'd like to get the inventory when I actually planned for it. That's kind of part of what running a really well synchronized supply chain is. But if you're going to spin that as a positive, you know, it's like, well, you know, oh, it's so wonderful. My friends, they never show up late when I invite them over for dinner. You know, if I say 7 p.m., they're there at 5.
Oh, yay.
On the dot. That's great. Let's celebrate that.
Well, Jeff Davis is a glass half full kind of guy.
Yeah, I guess so. And then we end with a large group, a cohort of the apparel people. To me, it's harder to compare them to everyone else. And the reason, one of the things is how the power of brand in pricing and how the brand and pricing can command larger operating margins. And we see this with like Lululemon, you know, running at 21.2, almost 21.7, almost 22% operating margin, you know? I mean, you can make a lot of supply chain mistakes when you have that kind of operating margin. And I think it was funny. You had a quote in there.
Which one are you thinking of?
Lululemon.
Lulu. We still have some degree of elevated air freight in our inventory balance on a cost base. Yes.
You know, I wonder how Walmart people, if you told the Walmart people, guess what? You could air freight some of that inventory. I mean, something that in Bentonville must be like a 4-letter word, right? Just not acceptable. But if you're Lululemon and people are willing to pay $80 for $7 spandex,
well, then
you can air freight.
You can air freight it in. Well,
but it is crazy. They, I mean, Lululemon has a very high weeks of supply. Their inventory position's gone up. Did they say anything about
what's behind
why
that?
their inventory is up?
They've just said we've made some significant progress, not completely optimized. So I think they recognize they've got a way to go.
They got some work.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Nike, gorgeous operating margin. They've cut inventory. Their sales are pretty steady, I would say. And they've cut inventory. They made that inventory more efficient through the system. Under Armour, what did Under Armour say? Because they've got a disaster story. Actually, in every way. Their operating margin is razor thin. They for an apparel, like a brand-driven company, a 1.6% operating margin. Like, just compare that to Lululemon. You know, Lululemon is more than 10 times more profitable per dollar sold than Under Armour.
Well, I mean, so David Bergman, he also tried to spin this positively. So their inventory is in a very healthy position. This is at Under Armour.
That's like calling me.
You're
my
very
weight
healthy.
is a very healthy
Just
weight.
big bones.
Yes, but that's what all the old people in my life would say.
But interestingly, his reason for saying that is that we don't have a lot of older products.
Right.
That's making up their inventory, and they're normalizing against leaner days last year.
Okay.
So that's the way they're looking at it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Maybe because it's a snapshot in time, and so it's easy to be super critical and snide when you haven't followed the story. So if the year before in 2022 they struggled with stockouts, and so they just went into this season completely rebounding to make sure that no shelf goes empty anywhere.
Well, and also the interesting thing about this category being, being the clothing, they're also often speaking about the third party channels, right? And that depending on what decisions other folks have made further down the line, that's impacting them as well.
Yeah, because ultimately, depending on the deals they've cut with the Macy's and the Kohl's of the world, that stuff always can end up back in their supply chain and end up in their outlet stores, which is where I will go and purchase it when I go to Maine in the summer.
I'll have a good bargain.
To the Kittery outlets. But you're hip and cool.
I try to be. Yeah.
I'm aware enough to know that Lululemon is still a very strong brand. Nike is a classic and hugely powerful brand. Under Armour these days, was that a blip brand? Because when I was a kid, no one dreamed of wearing Under Armour.
I would say Under Armour does well, yeah.
It's still a strong brand.
It is strong. It does very well with sports teams.
I think the other three brands are not
to brag with that.
Not that interesting anymore. Am I right about that?
I would agree. Which I say that, however, I'll just for one of them. So American Eagle.
Yes.
Of which I would have thought.
Who wears American Eagle?
I mean, you said it, not me. But then they.
No, I meant it. Like, there's got to be a market for it.
Well, apparently, but according to these figures, that is kind of what we're saying. And they're saying that the gross profit dollars increased by 83 million or 22%, and the gross margin rate up 680 basis points to 37%. So somebody's wearing American Eagle.
Yeah.
This is all Mike Mathias's quotes.
But then we have the Gap, and the Gap, they look like they're struggling.
Yeah. What do I have on here? We remain focused in fiscal 2023 on moderating buys and utilizing our responsive levers. So that's just talk for, we're trying our best here.
We've got Jesus take the wheel.
Jesus take the wheel.
I mean, to me, this was a very fun review. I hope Jeremy slapped some of the numbers up.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I'm sure the audience will see all sorts of other things that we didn't. And if so, comment wherever you get this podcast. I would love to hear what you guys saw. Good?
Yeah, good. Thanks
then
for
have
having
a great
me.
Weekend.
Yep. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you for coming. Take care.